Adjust yourself. I remember back in the day when I started getting into mastering albums or EPs, I would get feedbacks like, this song is not as loud as this song, which in an album, that's not what you want, right? You want to have like a consistent perceived loudness across the board, even though some songs will actually be louder than others because of maybe the type of instrument or the sound choices, right? Because you can have quieter sounds in some records and louder sounds in other records. Regardless of that, you want to make sure you have a consistent perceived loudness across the whole album. And because I would do the mastering for each track separately, it was difficult to track because then you are not able to fully have like a smooth flow to properly measure the perceived loudness. Now, this is something that you also actually have to mostly do with your ears. You have to listen to be able to gauge the perceived loudness and adjust accordingly so that you have a consistent loudness across the EP or album, right? For example, one of the times I had those feedbacks, the quieter song was hitting around -9 dB LUFS, while the louder song was hitting -11. So you can see that even though the louder song has a lower LUFS value, it was still loud regardless, and that's because of the sound choices in the record. Okay, so the best way to fix that accurately, in my opinion, is to export all of the mixes into a new mastering session and master each song within that session. That way you're able to go from one record to the other and measure the perceived loudness. Do you understand? For example, let's look at this EP that I mixed and mastered last year. If you notice, I have all of the tracks in this session. It's a 7-track EP, and I have all of the mastering chain for each song on each individual track, basically. Okay, but there's also one part of this that you need to bear in mind, and that's the fact that each song obviously have a different tempo. So you want to go into the ending or the beginning of the next track and automate the tempo to fit that song. And in Logic, it's very simple. All you have to do is come and show hide global tracks, or just press G, and you're going to get all of this tempo, signature, marker, and arrangement information. And if you wanted to add a new tempo, you're just going to click and adjust accordingly. So that way, when you go from one song to the next song, the tempo is going to adjust itself automatically. Do you understand? Which is very, very important so that you don't export a song with the wrong tempo information. And also, you want to have a seamless transition from one song to the other. Like, for example, let's listen to this record. Right? Now, even though this is a quieter song, clearly the perceived loudness still feels like they're on the same level. Do you understand? And this will only be possible if you are mastering the album in a separate mastering session, right? Because that way I can come here and adjust the limiter for each song and the clipper to make sure I have the correct perceived loudness between the tracks. Do you understand? It's very important. I'm going to turn on the metronome so you can hear how the metronome automatically switches from 115 BPM to 118, or from this 116 to 115. Let's go. Metronome, play. Right. 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 And as you can hear, the transition is seamless and the perceived loudness is good. Both records sound like they are on the same level, right? Just check another drastic tempo change. For example, let's go from 98 to 120. Right. So it's very, very important that you remember to adjust the tempo according to the song. And by the time you're done matching the album or EP, all you have to do is create a cycle range around that particular record and export. This, in my opinion, is very important. It's a simple technique, it's common sense, but not a lot of people actually think of doing this, except you're like a professional mastering engineer, right? And this will work with any DAW. In fact, I'm going to show you the same process in Pro Tools as well. The difference is different DAWs obviously have different way of automating the tempo, and you just need to know how your DAW automates tempo, right? But this is a simple method that you should use to master an EP or an album to get great results. Do you understand? Personally, I like to mix and master the songs first within their own sessions, right? Then I would disable the master chain, export the mix without the master effect, bring it to a new project like this, and then bring the master chain for each corresponding song into the mastering session. And then from here, I would go over each of the songs, listen to how they transition into each other, and listen to the perceived loudness of each record to make sure that one song does not feel louder than the other one. Do you understand? That way, when you deliver your masters, everything sounds great. Sometimes you might also have the luxury of having the track list available. Then you can arrange the song according to that. You might even be able to like extend maybe the ending of one song into the beginning of another song. If there's like an instrumental bleed, and to create a very amazing experience for the listener, which is great. And even when you have that kind of scenario, you have to make sure you set the tempo at the beginning of the next track. So even if you have the end of the previous track bleeding to the intro of the new track, it will still have a very smooth and consistent transition, which is great. So what you're looking at right now is the mastering session in Pro Tools. This, as you can see, is an 8-track EP, and just like I showed you in Logic, it's the same process. You import the mix into the mastering session and you do the mastering for each of the individual track within that session so that you can monitor the perceived loudness of each track. And like I mentioned earlier, you have to make sure you set the tempo accordingly for each track so that when you transition into the next track, you are working with the right tempo, and when you export, you'll be exporting the record with the right tempo information. So that's it. I hope you got something from this one as usual, and if you did, make sure you leave me a like and subscribe if you've not. If you'd like to book my services for mixing and mastering in stereo and Dolby Atmos, I'm going to leave a link down below to the engineers page so you can book my services, or hit me up on Instagram at BennyMacaulayDB. And if you'd like to buy my vocal and mastering presets for Logic and FL Studio, I'm going to leave a link below as well so you can cop them, okay? So that's going to be for now. I shall see you on the next one. Benny Macaulay out.